Hello everyone. I'm Carlos from Samsung R&D Institute Philippines. And today I will be presenting our workshop paper on behalf of my co-authors titled Evaluating LLM-Generated Lessons from the Language Learning Student's Perspective, a case study on Duolingo. But before we begin, I have a question for you Duolingo users. Have you encountered language lessons that contain scenarios that aren't really applicable in your day-to-day life? What do I mean by this? For example, you're using the app to try to learn Korean, and it frequently gives you a phrase to learn. I had fun at the party last night. But there's a problem. You're an introvert who hates parties. Now, given your background and preferences, you will most likely never have the need for this phrase in your vocabulary. So why bother learning it? Or at the very least, maybe a lesson suited to your preferences would be better? Now, why is this? How does Duolingo work? Now, Duolingo, like most modern technologies, use LLMs specifically for generating language lessons. But to accommodate users of diverse backgrounds, it generates lessons containing scenarios that are applicable or relatable to everyone. So these scenarios would include greetings, asking for directions, or ordering food. But for users like, let's say, professionals in multinational or multilingual environments, it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of personalization. So, take for example, you're a professional working in a big tech company with offices all over the world. You're most likely working with team members speaking different languages from different countries. In this case, you need to be able to communicate fluently with them in both general scenarios, like basic greetings, and also work specific scenarios that contain domain specific vocabulary. So, for example, as a software engineer working at Samsung, a Korean company, it would be very useful for me to learn in Korean. I've pushed my code on GitHub. Or let's say if I have Japanese counterparts, as a project manager, I would want to learn how to say in Japanese, can we extend the deadline for this? So our hypothesis is this. Because apps like Duolingo generates general scenarios, the lack of personalized lessons, in our case, work-related scenarios for professionals, acts as a barrier for users to gain professional level fluency in another language. So in our study, we defined professional level fluency as being able to comfortably communicate various work-related topics in their target language. So in our study, we aim to answer two research questions. First, what are the differences in perceptions of language learning students towards general and work specific scenarios from Duolingo's AI generated lessons? The second is, how do these perceptions affect their learning experience towards gaining professional level fluency in their target language? To answer our research questions, we did an exploratory study surveying 5 Duolingo users aiming to learn Korean who were also working for a multinational corporation. The survey begins, of course, by asking participants how long and how frequent they have used Duolingo for second language acquisition. Then, for both general and work related scenarios provided by the app, the survey asks how often they encounter them, and if they enhance or hamper their overall learning experience towards gaining professional level fluency. Lastly, the participants suggested lesson scenarios that would enhance their learning experience. So, in the context of our study, we find that general scenarios remain integral to participants' second language acquisition goals, as all of them, especially self described novices in the target language, report that these types of scenarios enhance their learning experience. Because these scenarios are relatable and are encountered more frequently in their daily lives, it enabled them to grasp foundational language concepts such as grammar and vocabulary easily. This is shown in some of the responses like, I can identify the words I hear during daily conversations. Now, Duolingo currently satisfies this, as all respondents reported encountering these general scenarios more often than work specific ones. Now, for work related scenarios, we find that respondents encounter them much less frequently than general ones. One respondent even reported having never encountered any, but for those who did, the general perception is that the work specific scenarios are able to bridge the fluency gap between being a novice and being a professional. One respondent reported that he or she has yet to encounter scenarios that contain technical jargon, such as CI/CD pipeline, user interface, and defect. This widens his or her perceived learning gap towards being able to communicate in professional settings. However, we propose that these work related scenarios may be more beneficial in later stages of their learning journey. One respondent noted that work related scenarios are still not applicable at the beginner level, showing that students are aware that it is necessary to first understand the fundamentals of the language from general scenarios before they can acquire professional level fluency from work related scenarios. Lastly, in our survey, we asked for suggestions on what type of lesson scenarios would help them gain professional level fluency. The suggestions topics were divergent, such as learning about verbs, traveling, negotiating task deadlines, and casual conversations. These divergent topics present an opportunity to leverage participants' backgrounds, goals, and habits to design language learning applications that can create more personalized lesson scenarios in terms of scenario content. So, in conclusion, we find that general scenarios are still useful, especially at the earlier stages of language acquisition. Second, work related scenarios serve as an opportunity to bridge the gap towards gaining professional level fluency. And lastly, there is an opportunity to design more personalized language learning applications that are able to take into account diverse user backgrounds, goals, etc. Thank you very much for listening. If you're interested in collaborating on this idea or other ideas you might have, please reach out to me at this email or send me a message here on LinkedIn. Thank you very much and have a good day.